Change anything here?
Nope, we're good. We are actually live, and welcome to another edition of Sports Talk New York, Facebook Live. We're taking baby steps, but today we're taking a huge leap. 1974, I thought I saw what was the greatest sports movie I had ever seen when my dad took me to see The Longest Yard. 2 years later, that changed when I saw The Bad News Bears. And then 1 year later, it changed totally, as this time, the second Denny Lemieux and Jim Carr came on the screen. 43 years later and 100 viewings at least later, it never gets old. AJ and I have done so many tribute shows to the movie on our radio show, but today we're actually thrilled to doing a Facebook Live edition of a Slapshot reunion show. We're doing two different shifts because we have 6 guys lined up. The first shift of 3, we have Jerry Hauser, who has appeared in dozens of films, TV series, animated series, commercials. Some of his most notable appearances are The Summer of 42 and its sequel, Class of 44, various Brady Bunch spinoffs through the 1980s and 90s. He was also, I wish he was Barney Rubble. He was Bam Bam Rubble. But my famous line in one of Ron Howard's movies is that Barney Rubble, what an actor, but he played Bam Bam Rubble. But you know him as Dave Killer Carlson. Joining him is Allan Nicholls, whose grandfather was a Hall of Fame goalie Riley Hearn, who played for the Montreal Wanderers. The Wanderers won the Stanley Cup with Hearn in goal in 1908, 1909, and 1911. He is a superstar in his own right, as he had a 5-year run on Broadway in several rock musicals, including Hair. Kind of ironic if you look on the screen for all of us now.
Nice.
Jesus Christ Superstar, along with his roles in such films as Nashville, and he was the associate director on Saturday Night Live. But we know him as the man who wore the C proudly for the Chiefs, bathrobes as well, Johnny Upton. So rounding out our first group is Dave Hanson, who would go on to play 10 seasons for the Detroit Red Wings and Minnesota North Stars of the National Hockey League and the New England Whalers, Minnesota Fighting Saints, and Birmingham Bulls of the World Hockey Association. He is the only Hanson brother who is really a Hanson, and for some reason they never thought of using his real name, so you know him as Jack Hanson. So let's first start off about the audition process. Jerry, how did you find out about the auditions, and how much hockey experience had you had? And if I'm not mistaken, your original role was supposed to be played by Dave Hanson, correct?
Yes. There you go. Okay, next question. Yeah, well, it was I was an actor back then, so it came in up on the casting charts, in Hollywood. So you had every actor of that age out there trying out for the movie. I had been introduced. I'm from Los Angeles, so there was no hockey in Los Angeles till really the Kings got here. I think there was a minor league team for a little while, but we started running around playing hockey on cement with sticks we'd get from the King games, broken sticks we'd get from the Kings games. Nobody knew how to skate, as evidenced by the way I skated in the movie. But no one knew how to skate, and the only place you could buy a hockey stick in those days was from the Sears catalog. LA was not a hockey town, but I subsequently learned how to skate, so I had that advantage when I went out to try out for the movie. And we were out there. Allan, you were there, weren't you? Yeah, you were out there. Yeah, you were in LA and you were trying out as well. Every actor in Hollywood was out there trying out for it. And the part, I don't know at what point they cast Dave. Dave can tell you at what point he was cast to play the third brother. But all along, my understanding was I was up for that role as Dave Killer Carlson. But I think a little bit of a different angle on it than he was in real life. Not quite as tough as the original.
Jerry, I don't think that's right. I think I was up for that role.
Were you? Oh no!
No. But actually, I think what they were doing, or I don't think, I know what they were doing is they had a number of people in L.A. at the Pickwick Ice Rink, which was the ice rink down in where is that, Jerry? Is that Burbank?
Yeah, it was in Burbank.
And it was an interesting place because it was an ice rink, and it was usually figure skaters from morning till night.
Right.
And
Again,
Universal,
there was no hockey in LA at the
right.
time.
So Universal took it over and had these skating auditions for various actors about town, and they wanted to get a look at a number of them just to see who was available and who could skate and who was a player. And I think in the back of George Roy Hill, the director's mind was that he wanted to have a choice of who resembled a comfortable, who was comfortable on the ice to play hockey, and he brought in Ned Dowd to actually oversee all of these skating auditions.
If they were going for who resembled who, I mean, look at Dave and look at me. I mean, it's a perfect match.
That's true. That's true. But the one thing I do know is that well, I know several things. I was at Altman's office with a bunch of guys, and I heard about it from Scott and Glenn. Scott Glenn came in and said, "Hey, Nicholls, you play hockey. You're from Canada. They're doing this hockey movie. You should go have your agent look into it." So, I was 2 movies in. I was a novice, but I could play hockey and I could skate. So
how many of the guys knew when you showed up to the audition about your hockey playing, your grandfather and the lineage there?
No one, not a soul. I hadn't, first of all, the hockey lineage thing came out much later in the process, but out there, like Jerry said, there wasn't much hockey, and so hockey wasn't the conversation. Where I'm from, Montreal, hockey is as normal as grilled cheese sandwiches. I mean, you just play hockey.
That's the best you could come up with. Hockey is as normal as grilled cheese sandwiches.
Well, that's what I got.
So I have visions of, like, there's a scene in The Producers, one of my favorite movies, where you do the auditions. Okay, the singing Hitler's over here and the dancing Hitler's over there. When you came in, did they just group you up? The skaters here, the non-skaters there, non-skaters go home, or how did they do that?
They had everybody. Well, actually, they had Ned kind of checking everyone out, and they had everybody out there skating together. Nick Nolte. They were really hot on Nick Nolte playing for the role of Ned, and Nick had never skated. So I remember he was out there with these plastic Lang skates in those days. They had those plastic boots. Remember those, Allan?
Yeah.
And
well, Ned wore those too.
Yeah, he did. And and Nick was out there every single day trying to learn. And I mean, his ankles were bloody from these skates because they would just rub on him. But he never could. I mean, obviously, he couldn't, master it well enough to be in the movie. But they had all the actors out there skating together. I remember it's such a Hollywood kind of story. I remember Peter Strauss, who was well known then, had been on Rich Man, Poor Man on TV, which was a mini series. He was out there, and we had these relay races. And we're racing down the ice to the end, and he's racing everybody, trying to show off so they could, get a part in the movie. And he's racing down the ice, but wasn't that good a skater and didn't know how to stop, and jumped up into the boards to stop himself and broke his leg. And in The Perfect Hollywood Story, I remember seeing him on The Tonight Show in those days, where he came on saying, "Oh yeah, I was supposed to be in this movie, but I broke my leg, so I couldn't do it." But yeah, they had everybody out there with Ned Dowd sort of looking him over and seeing who was, who really could skate and who couldn't.
Who was the actor that showed up in figure skates? There was one guy that showed up in figure skates. A big actor.
Yeah. There was another guy who you've never heard from since, who we were shooting the puck around, and he got clipped by the puck and got cut, and he sued Universal. So much for his career.
So Dave, let me ask you this, similar to AJ's question, going to one side and the other, skaters and non-skaters. You're a member of the 74-75 Johnstone Jets, a team that is actually etched in hockey history in Johnstown. They defeated the Broombusters to win the Lockhart Championship Series. That's Johnston's last professional championship. That team is what the movie is really based on. So I have to imagine going to an audition to play a player on a team that you already played for had to be somewhat strange. What was it like for you?
From what I recall, they had they being, I think it might have been Nancy and George Ray Hill and possibly even Paul and others, I'm sure. But they called us into the hotel room. What was the Sheridan Inn down there at the Holiday Inn? I forget how many names it was. But
It was a Sheridan in those days.
Sheridan. And they had us sit down at a table and put these scripts in front of us, I guess it was, and turned us to a page and said, "Okay, guys, we want you and you and you to read these lines." And that's pretty much all we did. We sat there and read them in front of them. I remember they kind of then gave each other a very uncomfortable stare and looked back at us and said, "Well, okay, you're the best we got."
I mean, and quite honestly, if you could read, what the hell? That's it.
Yeah, right. Well, that was the worst part about it. Then we tried to read scripts and act, and that didn't work out very well.
So never worked for me either.
Right. So George sort of turned you guys loose at that point, right?
Well, he did. I mean, from what I call the first scene was, it might have been our first speaking part was when we were getting ready to go on the ice and bantering back and forth in the locker room. And George, I forget exactly what it was, but, we were saying our scripted lines and he kept saying, "Cut, let's try it again. Cut, let's try it again." And finally he kind of said cut and sat down next to us. And you guys know his personality. I mean, he was just kind of laid back and loved to laugh. And he kind of quietly said, "Hey guys, this just isn't working out. Let's take a different approach. What would you think? What would you think? What would you do? What would you say if this was the circumstance in your real life? I mean, here's our scripted lines, but, really, what would you do?" And we kind of said, "Well, I don't know. We just, react." So he says, "Okay, then react." And started it again, and then we kind of reacted. He says, "Okay, from now on, you got the lines, but if whatever you want to do, just go ahead and do it." And that's kind of how a lot of it was impromptu, and probably why really the real reason is that we came across so well when we did speak is because we had lines, but we had the freedom, according to George, to say and do what we want when we want to do it. So we kind of threw the two together, and fortunately we didn't have a lot of lines and a lot of long things to say. They're all kind of short little bursts, but it came out pretty good.
But it's also interesting because the play is written by Nancy Dowd, who's a sister of your Jet teammate Ned Dowd. A lot of the dialogue and banter comes from Ned carrying a tape recorder around 24/7 during that championship season. So how much of that dialogue actually comes directly from you, and what percentage of the craziness in the film actually happened to the Jets?
Well, I can't, I don't know what percent of the dialogue, word for word, verbatim, but certainly the concept and the tone and the kind of things that were said were actually said.
I think anything that was insightful, funny, or really good was created by you, Dave, right?
Yeah.
So, Dave, I have to ask you this one, because one of my brothers said his favorite line in the movie is, "Oh, you'll be arrested and you get one call." And one of the brothers said, "Well, we'll call for pizza." That doesn't come up, in doing it.
Well, and again, I think, I'll be honest with you. I don't remember whether it was written in the script originally or we just kind of winged it. But either way, a lot of that was kind of impromptu and certainly appropriate for the type of things that the Carlson brothers and I and the rest of the guys on the team would come up with. I mean, Ned Dowd was probably the most wittiest person I've ever run into in my life. And we would sit in the locker room after games or during practice, after practice and stuff like that. And between him and the Carlsons and myself and a couple other guys, it would just be a laugh fest for hours. And so the bantering that you see going on there is certainly in character for how we were in real life.
For me, I'm sorry, but for me, coming from, Hollywood and it all being very new to me, you couldn't tell when we were rolling and when we were just hanging out. I mean, it was that seamless, which is, I think, what is an element of the film that really comes across is that honesty and the realism of it, that was the way it was. That was exactly what it was like.
If I may interject,
Yes.
I think what George, as the filmmaker, was trying to achieve was this amalgamation of a story to be told, and also in a situation and in a reality that would only seem real by the viewer if he had real hockey players in it and actors that could be sold off or could act like hockey players. That being said, when Ned carried around the tape recorder and the script was born, I think what Nancy got from Ned carrying around a tape recorder wasn't dialogue per se, but it was incidents and situations and things that happened. And then she manipulated all of that into a screenplay and into her story, which was pretty complex if you really want to think about it, about women's power, women owning the team, and wives leaving their husbands and being in control. And so on the set, George encouraged this kind of attitude of like, unless it's really important to the advancing the storyline, say whatever the hell you want to say. I mean, I would never have come up with that Dave's a mess line if I hadn't seen the guys being Hansons and Carlsons, if I hadn't seen them and witnessed them doing some ad-libbing, they were loosening it up. So, I mean, so George, as the filmmaker, took it upon himself to give that opening, to people.
So, it's interesting that you mentioned that because you're an award-winning writer yourself. What was your first impression when you were reading that script, from a writer's sensibility?
Oh, it was a great story, and it was about hockey. That's all I needed. I mean, I'm a big hockey fan, and it was, give me an opportunity to be with hockey players or any athlete for that length of time on a film. I'm sold, But with regards to the script and the writing and the sequences, like when I did that fashion show scene, George was intent on getting his delivery exactly the way he wanted it. He knew how to time it so that it led perfectly to that amazing Strother Martin putting his head on the phone after he hangs up the phone. I mean, stuff like that. I remember his direction to me was, after about 5 takes of me doing that whole monologue, he comes up to me and he goes, "Allan, this is really good." Actually, that's too animated. He'd say, "Allan, it's really good, but can you do it better?" What's better, So I just did it again and again. He was amazing.
Yeah, it's also one of my favorites. I mean, that's the other thing. In movie history, you're lucky in a movie if you get that one iconic line, whether it be in The Godfather, make him an offer you can't refuse, Jerry Maguire. But in Slapshot, there are thousands, and one of them is, everyone with the exception of my wife is going to be running for that door. It's just it's such a great line. So here's the interesting thing, Jerry. You had already had Summer of 42 under your belt. That film became a blockbuster upon its release, grossing over $32 million, making it the 6th highest grossing film of 1971. One of the most successful films in history. You had already been in a stage production of The Sunshine Boys with Jack Gilford and Milton Berle. Mike, you have Nashville under your belt and was nominated for a movie that was nominated for a total of 11 Golden Globes. To date, the highest nominations received by any one film. So both of you
This is great. I'm loving this. Just keep going.
So both of you obviously come to that film with street cred. That being said, what's it like the first time you guys meet Paul Newman? Jerry, you go first.
It was really cool. I mean, it was Paul Newman. You come in, you look at his eyes right away. I mean, there were times when I'm doing scenes with Paul. There are those moments. You can't, just because I'm an actor and I'm there doesn't mean I'm not also in awe of the fact of who I'm there with. It was very much that way. I mean, going, well, I'm standing here with Paul Newman. I mean, it was exciting. In short order, I mean, he was a regular guy, you know. I mean, he was a superstar, so he faced all that in public and everything else. But one-on-one and with all of us, he was absolutely one of the guys and would hang and do practical jokes and, you know. But, it was not intimidating because of him. He was very approachable and a great guy and would hang with us all the time. As it was with the hockey players. I mean, that too, you don't think of it that way, but these are professional hockey players. And I'm coming in and I'm looking at them. I'm watching them on the ice doing amazing things. And now I'm hanging with them and I'm supposed to be one of them that was the great equalizer. There were definitely no room for any egos on that set. They absolutely wouldn't let that happen. That's for sure.
Mike, Allan, how about you? The first time you met him?
I had the privilege, like my very first film was Nashville, and that was pretty star-studded.
You think?
And I had performed on Broadway, and I had also performed in LA at the Universal Amphitheater, where a lot of stars came to see Jesus Christ Superstar. So meeting stars and I toured with a rock band for years. Meeting stars is big for me. I'm always starstruck, with the exception of Hauser. But and so here you have this kid. I'm still a kid from Montreal who to this day is still starstruck when I meet a famous athlete or any athlete, a famous actor or any actor. There's something about that in me. I don't know what it is. When I met Paul, I was equally as starstruck, but I treated it like I was just meeting another Joe Lunchpail, And but he was great to work with, as Jerry said. And I went on to do 3 other films with him. And he became a pretty good friend in the end. I spent some time at his kitchen table in Weston, Connecticut. But I have probably the funniest story that I've never told before. I may have told Jerry, but...
Yeah, you did. I was just going to ask you to tell that story.
Okay, so I'm in Montreal, my home, and I'm producing a film with Altman called Quintet. The star is Paul Newman. Montreal is the home of some pretty great restaurants. So we decided to go out to this 3-star restaurant called Les Halles on Crescent Street. Paul Newman, myself, Bob's producer, Tommy Thompson, and Bob Altman. And we go in and the 4 of us sit down at a table and the chef comes out and chef owner, and it's like really high end. And gets down to ordering, and Paul orders his meal. I order mine. Blah, blah, blah. He orders a salad, and then he asks the waiter, "Could you bring me some mustard, some oil, some vinegar, some ground pepper, and some salt?" And he proceeds to make salad dressing at the table. Now, this is 1977. So Paul Newman's, hasn't come out yet. And I cracked up when I thought about that later. I was at a table.
You were at Paul Newman's own.
Yeah.
Allan, you talk about working a lot with Altman and with George Roy Hill in this film. How different were they as directors? You talked a lot about George Roy Hill. What was between that and doing all the films with Altman?
Totally different. Very originals, but both totally different. George, they were friends, by the way. George Roy Hill came from a live television background. He used to direct live television in New York.
Playhouse 90 type of thing?
Yeah. And he was, very script oriented. He was going actor oriented, and he was very interested in the story and timing, and being kind to the editor in what he gave them to compose a film. Altman, on the other hand, was very interested in he was more interested in behavior and more interested in kind of a fluidity and how people behaved on the screen, rather than whether they got all the words perfect and whether the tear fell at the right time or whatever. So they were totally different, but equally, or not equally as talented, but they were both amazing directors.
To add to that real quick, it was interesting for me because I started Summer 42 was the first movie that I had done, and subsequently, before I did Slapshot, I'd done some other films and some TV, but generally worked with directors that were, somewhat hand-holding as an actor. I could go there, I could, ask them, how was that, this, that, and it kind of helped me through it. I learned in short order, I was on that movie because I was going to perform, and it was up to me to basically figure it out. George would come and say something like you had said earlier, Allan, like, do it better, or something like that. But he expected you to bring it. And that was really new to me, that I was there and it was up to me to do that. And he would correct, he would direct where it was necessary, but he wasn't there to hold your hand. I went up to him one time after a take and that he had said, print, okay, let's move on. I went up, I said, was that okay, George? Looking for that insecure actor reassurance, and he went, I accepted it, didn't I? Okay.
So Dave,
I have to add one thing, and this is for Dave, because Dave was obviously not an actor, but he should also realize that 2 years before Slapshot, I was not an actor either. I feel bad thinking that I got to do all these things, and I never trained for any of it. I shouldn't have been in the position that I was in, but I'm happy that I was. But,
if just to add to that again, you mentioned Dave. It was what George really loved. Both Paul and George. Paul Newman talks about Slapshot as being one of his favorite movies.
Yep.
And part of the reason of that is because everybody was just so real. There wasn't the typical Hollywood hierarchy in what went on. I'm getting slap in my headphones. There wasn't the typical hierarchy, and everybody was just very real, as evidenced by Dave, which usually on the set, what you have on the set, you have the director, you have the assistant director, you have levels of the protocol of who you speak to, what you do when you want to find something out, who you call, right? It was like, you never call the director, right? It was like 1 a.m, and I think it was you, Dave, wasn't it? 1 a.m, he was out drinking with some of the guys or whatever, and calls up George Roy Hill at 1 a.m. Hey, George, what time you want us there tomorrow? Which is like unheard of to do something like that. You'd never do anything like that. But you can speak to it more than I can, Dave. They didn't care. They were hockey players in this movie, but they weren't looking to have a big career in Hollywood. You can speak about that, can't you, Dave?
Well, back to Mark's original question that started the conversation of, about being, were you starstruck? How did you, what did you think when you met these people? That kind of, that leads into just what you're saying, Jerry. My recollection of my first meeting of Paul Newman simply is, we're in the playoffs, and we have a game, and I'm in bed sleeping, having my pregame nap, and there's a pounding on the door, and I get out of bed, woken up a little bit unsettled, and open the door, and there's this guy standing in front of me, and I'm standing in my underwear and socks, and he's going, "Are you Dave?" I says, "Yeah." He says, "Well, I'm Paul Newman." He puts his hand. I says, "Oh, okay. Nice to meet you, Paul." And then he went on and, "Well, I'm sorry. It looks like I woke you." "Well, yeah, you did. I'm having a nap. But you mind if I come in?" "No, I don't mind. I'm going back to bed." And I think that kind of really kind of set the tone in a sense for us, because to your point, Paul is just a regular guy, and we were, we, the hockey players, were in our environment. We were in our arena. We were in our town. We were in our locker room. We were doing our kind of stuff. And we're athletes that typically just prank, pull jokes, have fun doing what we're doing. And that whole attitude, we took it to the set, and we didn't care who was in front of us and who we did it to. I think one of the first jokes we had was against Jerry. So you talk about, we weren't starstruck, and we had to slap somebody down because of their egos, because they were in our house, we did that, Jerry.
No ego.
But you guys hate
and everybody, you talk to these guys. I mean, I've had the fortune of hooking up with these guys quite often over the years, and anytime we ever talk about it, it's how they talk about how that whole world of theirs that they live in every day really didn't exist in Johnstown when we were filming, because of the Carlson brothers and the Hanson and the other hockey players kind of set the tone. They did things that were uncharacteristic on the typical movie sets. And George and Paul and Strother Martin and all those, the cameramen and the grips and everybody else, I think because of such a change of atmosphere and environment, they all bought into it and we're having a great time doing it, still getting the job done.
Well, if the story is correct, so first of all, it's almost a perfect storm, because first of all, athletes are creatures of habit. They're together so much time, whether it be the long bus rides or the long season, the locker room. So practical jokes are part of it. Then on the other hand, you have actors who are on 10 to 12-hour sets, and also to break up the monotony. So you have the Hansons and the Carlsons, who are known as the ultimate practical jokers, and then you throw Paul Newman in the mix, who is also known to be a practical joker. The story goes that Paul Newman actually did one practical joke that actually got everyone fired and the movie shut down, sort of a fake car accident. Is that true? And can you guys speak to that? I don't know who wants to go first on that one.
Yeah, I was there. Were you guys there?
I was there.
I wasn't there.
Where he drove, it's when he's going to
Ned Braden's house, cabin in the woods.
House. And there's a drive-by where he drives, and he drives off camera. He's going up the driveway, I guess. And he drove off camera and around, so you couldn't see him anymore. And where the camera was, George and everybody else couldn't see him. And he had set it up back there where they had all these trash cans and everything else. So he drove back there, and all of a sudden, just this crashing sound, like he had just totally wrecked the car. Am I remembering this correctly, Dave?
Yeah, we were all back there, so we're throwing junk out and rolling a couple tires down, spare tires down the road. Yeah, keep going.
George, I just recall that George freaked out. He was pissed off by that happening.
And yeah, evidently he said that was it. He shut down the set. Now, it's interesting, Alan, that you were probably there at the invention of Newman's own salad dressing. But Dave, you might be indirectly responsible for Paul Newman's popcorn. Can you share that story with us?
Well, Allan was part of that too.
Yeah.
Paul we were at the Sheraton Inn, and Paul had a little sauna put in. He liked his Budweiser at night and everything else, but every morning he'd be there, he'd be up, he'd go and he'd kind of sweat out the night before, and this sauna that he had installed by the pool. And he was always doing practical jokes, and as were we. And so one night we went in there and we filled his sauna with popcorn. I remember that we filled his sauna with popcorn, not realizing that the heater was going to go on in the morning and start burning it. But do you recall this, Allan?
I do, and I'm also reminded. Actually, AJ, this answers the differences between Altman and George Roy Hill. This also came up in. Well, I'll tell two stories. So, because it also involves the Hansons, or a Hanson, and some Carlsons. So
tell the story.
The first night of so Altman always, or in the two films that I did with him before I did Slapshot, he showed dailies, which was the footage from the day before when it got back from the lab. He showed it as a reward to the crew and the cast, and everybody came, and it was a party. I thought that was true of every film. So we were out having a few pints, and the Hansons, Dave and the Carlsons, and I think Ned, and I said, let's go find out where the dailies are so we can watch the dailies. And they said, what's that? And I said, that's the footage. So we go to the office. Says, oh yeah, they're upstairs at the War Memorial. They're showing them upstairs. So we go up to this room. We open the door. We walk in. We've got a couple of 6-packs with us, and there's Paul Newman, George Roy Hill, Dee Dee Allen, the editor, and Bobby Crawford, the producer, and a projectionist. That's it. I'm expecting to see like a full crowded house, everybody watching the dailies. Well, that's not how George Roy Hill did it. So I explained to him, hey, we're here to watch the dailies. And he goes, well, that's not how I do it. But I said, well, gee, I was on Altman's films with the party, and we watched. So he said, okay. And he screened it all for us that particular night and went away from his regular working. That was working time for them, and we made it a party.
So this is interesting also. Dave, you're part of the atmosphere there, championship seasons. People are into the Jets. It kind of was the central point of the town. Now fast forward, and there's this movie set and all these stars. How did the atmosphere change in town once the movie started being filmed?
I can't say that it really changed, because we maintain a routine, which was, go to the hockey rink, and then we're not in the hockey rink, go to the bars. So that, that routine didn't change. It's just that we brought a whole bunch of other people with us this time, including Paul and Jerry and Allan and the rest of the crew. So I don't think that there was really much of a change then, other than the guys being around and really the town accepting everybody in, because if I recall, when it was a wrap and everybody was pulling out, there was people with signs on the street kind of waving goodbye, thanks for being here, banners across the hotel room. So it was kind of business as usual till close to the end.
So I know that people always want, the toughest to find memorabilia surrounding their favorite movies. And I think I have now unearthed maybe the holy grail of slapshot memorabilia that people need to find. So, Jerry, I read an article somewhere that the atmosphere back there in Johnstown inspired you to write a song called Hollywood in My Backyard. And evidently, you recorded it with Susan Newman and the Chiefs. Now, I searched everywhere, and I cannot find a copy of this anywhere. I can't even find reference to it on any, slapshot story. I was going through newspapers.com and looking for old articles from before the movie came out, and I found it there. So do you have a pressing of that anywhere, and where can people hear it, and what was it like?
I don't know that anybody could hear it. I don't know that anybody wants to hear it. and credit where credit's due. Allan and I wrote it, and then we went into the studio.
Went into a radio
studio there, and Dave was there. Dave's sang on it. And we recorded it there.
I have the lyrics typed out somewhere.
I remember, wasn't the name It Had to Be Johnstown?
Yeah.
That's where, because we not only sang it in the studio and they started playing it on the radio station, but we got invited down to Pittsburgh for like a morning show to play on, like live with Regis and Kathy kind of show.
Right.
And if I recall, we got up and sang it, and they had a bunch of old folks in the audience seats there, and we kind of got booted off the set or something. I think it was,
gee, what a shock.
I have some photos from the session, and Jeff Carlson told me that he has a cassette of the songs.
Right. I had one somewhere. I have no idea where it is. I can look around and try to find it.
Oh, yeah,
top dollar for it for the
absolutely. I need to see it, and then maybe we can make a video. It will definitely go viral for sure.
So we asked this question yesterday, the Bad News Bears guys. We talked about memorabilia from that show and the baseball cards, and I asked those people, I ask you now, what type of memorabilia do you have around your house now from the movie, if any?
I still have some snapshots. I brought my camera out one day and took pictures very quickly. I think I have pictures of Dave's wife and Dave.
We all have those pictures.
I wasn't going to go there.
And
In fact, hold on, let me get my wallet. Here we go. I got
no,
Craig Pollard's got a picture of me standing naked in the doggone shower.
I do.
He was taking all the time.
I took a lot of pictures, and I do have one of you naked in the shower.
I have something. Oh, my uniform. I auctioned off at a homeless shelter fundraiser, and some doctor locally bought it for $500. This was about 15 years ago, and I don't think I have anything else. Just snapshots.
So,
I have my stick.
Oh wow!
I think
That's
I still have
pretty
my stick.
Yeah, I got a stick signed by everybody from the movie. In fact, I just cleaned out my closet, found it the other day. The only other thing that I think really that I cherish and I don't know that I want to get rid of is I have the actual Iron League jacket that we wore.
Oh wow!
Oh.
Same jacket with the patch, and it's I keep thinking of what good is it still in my closet for 40 some years, but I won't get rid of it.
You know what I might have? I might have one of your T-shirts. Remember those T-shirts?
Oh, I've got those.
But that wasn't from the movie.
He used to make. Dave
Dave's
used to make T-shirts. He's
yeah,
quite an artist.
Dave's an artist, and he did caricatures of all these players.
Dave's a killer.
So I've got a bunch
Dave's
of
a mess.
your T-shirts. So he did caricatures of a number of different characters, Paul and a couple of others. So I have those T-shirts. I have an old Carlson brother T-shirt with the three, with Jack and Jeff and Steve. I have one of their T-shirts. I've got one of that old gold T-shirt. That I think Allan, you wore the gold T-shirt, didn't you?
Yeah, with the
Charleston on it. I've got that T-shirt that we had. I have my original jersey still.
I might have your jock strap. I might have your jock strap, Jerry. I'm not
right
sure.
next to the picture of Dave's wife.
Yeah.
No, you don't. Jerry didn't wear a jock strap. He wore his boxers.
That's true.
I got to tell you were talking. I'm sorry.
It's all right.
But you were telling just practical jokes. I left that movie definitely with PTSD because there was no way in the world you could let down for a second around Dave and the rest of the players. It was relentless. Whether you'd go out on the ice and come back in and take a shower and put on your clothes and you put your underwear on, and they had this stuff, Dr. Brown's Hell's Fire. Do you remember that, Dave? It was this stuff almost like butch wax, really thick, like thick Vaseline stuff. It was red, and it was like a Ben Gay kind of thing, but on steroids. And they sat there and they'd like wipe it into the crotch of your underwear. So you put your underwear on, and then it, needless to say,
There's a lot of other things that happen that are politically incorrect.
Yeah, but they would do things all the time. We had Rick Sharp was the makeup guy.
Little Ricky.
Little guy. They got him one day and they wrapped him up in tape.
Tinfoil.
Tinfoil.
Yeah.
And then tape around that to hold it on. Yeah. And then threw him in the shower, turned it on, and ran away. Right? Or one day you'd never fall asleep near these guys. Fell asleep outside. They grabbed him. He fell asleep. They grabbed him. They pulled his clothes off, ran away. I mean, it would be. I shot late one day. I come back to my hotel room. All of my clothes are knotted all together and hung out the window. My mattress is in the shower. I mean, it was just anything. The main one I can't really describe here that they did to me, but anything they could do, you just could never let down.
The one they did to you that you can't describe is typical NHL rookie hazing, but different body parts got shaved, correct?
But yes,
Yeah.
but the process of which was horribly compromising.
All right. So before we let you go and bring in the next, but you mentioned your memorabilia. So this poster behind me is actually signed by Paul Newman. It's like one of my
Oh, that's
favorite
cool.
pieces.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So and then
I see Dave's book there too.
yeah, Dave's book, and then a friend of mine was nice enough to give me this unbelievable tabletop hockey game, and so here is Tim McCracken.
Oh, nice.
Here's Killer.
Hey, all right, I made it.
The Hansons. So I got Reg Dunlap. I got both teams. So it's pretty cool when we face off. So, all right, let's go to, and we asked this of the Bears as well. Your favorite moment personally in the movie for yourself, and the least memorable moment for you, something you wish didn't happen on the movie. Let's start with Allan on this one.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Least favorite moment. I could be corny and say I didn't have a least favorite moment because they were all pretty terrific. There was some least favorite moments after hours or in the early morning hours, but that'll go unsaid. But favorite moment is probably when we left Johnstown and we all
Nice.
no, when we all got on the bus
Yeah.
and all those people were lined up outside, the townsfolk waving goodbye, and they had, I think you mentioned it before, Dave, they had bye Slapshot, goodbye Slapshot, we'll miss you on the Sheridan, the letters on the outside the hotel. And it was pretty moving, that we'd had some effect on a town. And we did have, we kind of came together really well as a team and as a group. And it was just, that was a good time.
Dave, for you?
I kind of with Allan. Probably when we first started out, I don't know how far into the filming we were in, but it got to the point where, Hanson brothers, or at least the hockey players, Jeff, Steve, and myself being from Minnesota, our typical routine is at the end of the season, we head back to Minnesota. And what do? Steve and Jeff would go to northern Minnesota and they'd drink beer and fish and play softball. I'd go back to St. Paul, drink beer and play softball. And so here we are, filming where we have to be on set 6 a.m. in the morning, get through makeup. And often we would sit there and 7 to 8 o'clock at night, it would be a wrap. And all we did was sit around and wait all day long. And this would go on for days and at times. And, and we did the pranks and things like that, but you couldn't go outside, hang out in the sunshine for fear of getting a suntan. There's all these kind of things that were just out of, the shininess of making a movie started to wear off. So we actually decided we've had enough and we took off. Didn't tell anybody, but we just left. And, and actually next thing we know, the state police are all looking for us. We're being threatened of being sued, so forth, so on. So George and the crew kind of pulled us back in. So that, I wouldn't say that was my least favorite, but, that was kind of a tough time. And probably the most fun was just, quite frankly, for 3 months being around these guys. And it wasn't necessarily on set because that often turned into a lot of work and, like I said, a lot of waiting time. But it was the after hours stuff where we would get out and we would play and often go into the wee hours of the night and call George Roy Hill up at 1 a.m. in the morning or put popcorn in Newman's stall and Newman's, those kind of things that we had fun. It was just, that was it. That was the good stuff and the bad stuff.
And Jerry, for you?
On the bad side, it was early on. We got there a few weeks early to prep for the movie and rehearse and so we were there and we'd go out and practice. And Yvon Barrette, who played the goalie, we were out practicing one day and he had his goalie stuff on. He's in goal, and we're in was it Greensboro? Is that the name of the rink?
Greensburg.
We're in Greensburg, and I'm there, and I'm out there, and I take this slap shot on him in goal. I didn't know he wasn't really a goalie. I didn't know that he didn't really know what to do. And you know, you're standing there with your pads like this. So the shot comes in, and as the shot comes in, he turns his leg, right? So he exposes the inside of his knee, hits him right on the inside of the knee. I mean, off to the emergency hospital. I thought I was going to get fired. I mean, it totally laid him up. And I mean, you can ask him about it. I mean, I felt horrible, but I really thought I was going to get fired. They were so pissed at me. So that would probably be my low point, seeing as the movie was just starting.
Yeah.
And, you know, the high point for me, I think I've got to, you know, sort of echo what Dave said, was the fact that here I am, I'm 24 years old. I'm into my acting career, and I'm doing a movie with Paul Newman about hockey that I really loved, on location for 3 months. I mean, it was a fantasy beyond belief for me the whole time that I was there. I mean, there were definitely, as Dave said, the pranks and the this and the that, and days of shooting and scenes that we did, and everything that was exciting and fun. But overall, it was this overall experience that just changed my life. It did, you know, I was really coming into my own, and it really ushered me in. So it's, I think it would have to be just the overall experience.
Well, and the fact that we're all still friends today, that's been pretty cool.
That's really cool. It's like you can really understand what a team is like, because it really felt like being on a team. I mean, more so than other films I've done. It felt like being on a team, and you're connected with everybody. You know, again, like Allan said, we're all still friends, and we see each other, and it's like we saw each other yesterday, and it would be a year or whatever in between. So,
Jerry and I did an event a month ago in Binghamton, New York, and he was running around looking for hand sanitizer. And it was like before the COVID thing, but I think you knew something, Jerry, didn't you?
I was actually going in. I was going in for a knee operation 2 days after that, which is why I was running around for that. 2 days after the event that we did, and it was like, I cannot get sick because I'm going to the hospital. So I was doing that, and then within, literally within a week or two after that, COVID hit.
Unbelievable. Guys, thank you so much. We're going to bring out our next set of 43 years later, the movie Other Than the Clothes. Still, it's timeless. I mean, if you dress Paul Newman in a different type of leather jacket, you wouldn't know, the movie's, it's not dated other than the clothing. And it stands up, and it's got a cult following. And I myself, to this day, if anyone at a hockey game says, I'm going to the concession stand, can I get you anything? I'll say, none of that stinking root beer. So, it's just amazing. And this has been a blast, and we really appreciate you taking the time to be with us.
That was great.
Thanks a lot.
Say hi to Paul and Chris and Yvon for me.
Yeah,
you got it. Thanks so much. All right. We're going to, start bringing in our other guys. So let's see. Oh, look at that. Chris is definitely ready. There's Yvon, and let's.
Hey, Yvon.
Oh, man. And
Good meeting you.
Is that Murney?
Nice to see you.
And then let's see. We're going to bring in Captain Hook. Look at this. And Dave, if you want, you can still hang because we have enough room here. So all right. So we're going to continue our Slapshot reunion. As now we welcome one more chief, one duck, and a bulldog. Joining us is the man who is the first chief we actually see in Slapshot. It's he sits there and goes over the rules. It's Denny Lemieux, none other than Yvon Barrette. So how you doing, Yvon?
Yvon.
I know that, but I was told
fine. Thank you very much.
I was told to call you that. So I did.
He froze up on you, Mike. Mark said he did. He froze up on you.
The guys told me I had a. So you're going to have to tell us a little bit about why that pisses you off so much, but we did that. Joining him is a man who's worked on the stage, appeared in television series, as well as movies. He's well-known voiceover talent as well, but he is also a fellow slapshot goalie who plays a pivotal part in the Chiefs' turnaround. It's great to have Chris Murney, aka Tommy Hanrahan, join us once again. And rounding out the group is a man who played college hockey in Emerson College. He acted in dozens of projects from highly acclaimed feature films like The Deer Hunter to TV shows like Law and Order, but he's probably best known for his role as Tim Dr. Hook McCracken. It's awesome to have Paul D'Amato round out the group. How you guys doing?
Fine, thank you.
Everyone looks bearded. I mean, everyone has beards on. Paul, sound.
That's a pandemic time. There is no way to get our hair cuts. Get out the house. We're locked in our houses.
We are.
So we asked the other guys earlier about how they found out about the audition and how auditions went. For you guys, for the goalies, I have to imagine it was different than everyone else. How did they audition the goalies? Chris, you want to take that one first?
Oh, all right. The casting woman, who was a little short woman, who in the city, we were in New York, and someone had bowed out of doing the role. I can't remember who it was, and so she brought me in. She said, "I think I have a wonderful thing for you to play," and it's a hockey movie. They're shooting it in Johnstown, but somebody just bowed out and, "Well, can you just swear at me?" I said, "I beg your pardon." She said, "Well, just swear at me. Just give it to me." So I just went off on her, and I can't even say what I said right now, but it was just a blue streak. I mean, she was backing up toward the 57th Street window, and finally she said, "I think you have to meet George." So they flew me down to Johnstown to meet George. And the introduction was, I brought me right in, and I had to fight with Paul. But they had to make sure that I wasn't going to really hit Paul. So I faked the fight with Paul, and we laughed a bit, and George said, "Okay, you're it." He got the gig, and that was it.
How about for you?
You're talking to me?
Yes. You frozen? I think we
Yes,
might.
okay.
Oh, and what was the audition like for you?
For me,
Yes.
it was quite different. I live far of Montreal, 500 miles east of Montreal. I received a call in the morning at 9 o'clock from somebody of l'Union des Artistes, and she said, "Would you like to do a movie with Paul Newman?" I said, "Sure, no problem." I kept doing my things, but a friend of mine who was reading George Orwell and Mike Hanson in Montreal through the French artistic colony phoned me back and said, "Yvon, it's very serious. You have to make it to the Ritz-Carlton for 6 o'clock tonight. Your plane ticket is at Montjoly Airport." And I made it. I was there 5 before 6, and I met Mr. Mike Fenton, who was the casting director. George Orwell was already back in LA. Mr. Fenton told me about the movie, saying that the movie starts on blue and da-da-da. And they told me about the fact it's a hockey movie, and they were looking for a short, squat French Canadian to portray the goalie. And my friend Donald Pilon was reading them. I brought them the day before to see some pieces of movie we had made together. And as soon as they saw me, they said, "Okay, we want to see him." They had already auditioned something like 400 people in Montreal. They were unhappy with it. So I made it. We had dinner. I went back to Mr. Fenton's room. I read the script, and around midnight, I auditioned. We did the opening scene. He was giving me lines. And as soon as we went through the pages, he started improvising, and I already was feeling the character pretty well. So after that exercise, I said, "I think okay, Yvon, I will. He had it on a tape recorder. He brought it to LA. Will listen to it, and they said, "Okay, let's see." And that's quite a fantastic story.
It's unbelievable. So now, Paul, your
And
story is funny in some respects because I remember when you were on our radio show, you telling us that you had a meeting, just one of those meetings with your agent, and your agent was asking you, how else can he sell you? And you told him you added a couple of your talents. Could you share with us what those talents were and how that led to this role?
sorry,
Paul?
I'm French speaking, and I missed.
No, that was for Paul.
Question. Oh, Paul. Okay, good.
I think we're losing Paul's audio for some reason. Paul, you don't have audio. Let's see. Hold on. Paul, you there?
You're very soft. You have to go louder.
Okay, I will go louder.
Oh, you're getting there.
About it. How's that? All right.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Go ahead.
Okay. So he said. I said I could skate. He said, really? I said, yeah. I said, I'm probably the best skater you ever sat in front of. Because at some point he had angered me. And he said, well, next time there's a hockey film, I'll let you know. And I'm like, whoa, okay. So I did. and the next thing I know, I'm auditioning at 1 o'clock in the morning for up at Sky Rink in New York City. And I said, oh my God, I can skate better than these guys. And he said, really? I said, yeah. He said, well, that was that.
So just from asking what specific talents you have, you end up getting this role. Now, Yvon, okay, let's see, let me make sure.
Yes.
All right, so we're about 4 to 5 minutes into this segment. The under-over was 5 minutes. Your accent makes for so many memorable lines. Obviously, the one that everyone loves is "Who owns the Chiefs?" The hair, the allergies, or "You just some stupid English pig." Which is your favorite line that you uttered in the movie?
My favorite line is definitively "Train me right fucking now." That's the best line for a lot of fans. And the other one is for sure, "Who owns? That's the one that was the favorite one for German people who did some tour in Germany. And I had to learn it in German. Wem gehört the Chief? Gehören.
So, Yvon, there's a French language or French Canadian type of language version of the film where you're actually dubbed over your voice. Are there any lines that are funnier in French/Canadian than they are in English, and what are they?
You know what? That's funny. I was familiar with the English version, and when we came back to Montreal, and Nancy Dodd decided to do a Quebec version because they had done one in France, and as soon as she heard it, she said, "If I bring it in Canada, they will kill me." So they did one in Quebec, which was the first American movie translated in Quebec. And that was a big hit. But when I went in the studios to do the lines, it was easy for me because it was in French and ta-ta-ta. But I was really not as familiar as I was with the English ones. And that was interesting because George Royal was always telling me, "Yvon, be careful, you speak too well." My English was becoming a little better, so that was not good enough for the movie. And sometimes I had to write the lines in the script because they were not sure if what I said was good or not. I used to speak French a few times in the movie. That's it. But that was a great experience. For me, I was 29 years old, and to have the privilege to work with Newman, that was just fantastic. And when I met the guys, Paul, all those guys, we became brothers after all those years. And that's quite unusual. You don't see that very often in movie business. And that's it.
Yeah, Chris, your role is a little different. And what I find so cool and maybe ironic about it is that you're also known as a great voice actor. Yet in the iconic Hanrahan moment, when Paul is uttering the famous lines back and forth, you're wearing a goalie mask. So the only thing we really see is your body and your eyes. And I know this is a very dated reference that probably only AJ is going to get.
That's because I'm a lot older than Mark, and
yeah, it's a running joke, but it's very Edgar Kennedy-esque. And what I mean about that, for those who are watching,
I'm sorry, who is that? It's too far back for me.
Right, so Edgar Kennedy in the silent films was the master of the slow burn. For those people that are watching that have no idea, how tough was that scene to pull off behind the mask? And how many takes did it take? And did George Roy Hill have any comments to get more out of you? Because it's just, I mean, if you really think about it, your emotions are on full display without seeing your face at all.
Kabuki acting. Just a little kabuki. And if you figured the only thing that you have is this guy, then what you do is you use what you've got. And that's the eyes. Whoops. Down there. Get in. There. They go back and forth, So those were the things that you had to work with. And I knew that. And George knew that. So when he talked to me, he just said, make the eyes work. And that was it. Just make the eyes work.
Wow. But even just the mannerisms in your shoulder and the back and forth, and as you can see, you getting more and more agitated just from the movement, it's phenomenal.
After a while, it would have been the fact that we had probably done with George, you didn't know what he wanted sometimes. He just basically said, do that thing you do, make me laugh. And you're getting tired, so you're just trying anything. And then the body's starting to give out, and with one of the part of the scenes I can tell you about later, where it did. So they had to. That was when I went over the boards after Paul. We shot about 8 takes before lunch, and then he took a break, and I said, George, I don't think I can get over those boards again. He said, what do you want? I said, build a ramp. He put a little ramp there. So they put a ramp there, and after lunch we did a couple of takes, slid right up the ramp and over the boards, piece of cake.
So Paul, in keeping with the eyes, you're another one whose eyes tell so much. When you're wielding that stick, you have those menacing, intense eyes. So much so that scene actually inspired John Byrne, who is a Marvel artist, to use it as an inspiration for his take on Wolverine. You're a Bruins fan growing up, and you saw a lot of those Flyers, Bruins wars. Was there a player that you kind of challenged, to beat, Tim McCracken?
Okay, the character was based on 3 things: Dave Schultz, Bobby Schmack, and the Shark in Jaws.
The Shark in Jaws.
And that's the truth. That's the only thing I was scared of, is the Shark in Jaws. Everybody else was, fair game. But yeah, I was scared of the Shark in Jaws.
So wait a minute. So Dave Schultz was one of the inspirations.
Right.
If I'm correct, and I might have this wrong, I'm pretty sure his brother Ray actually played a bulldog. So he was one of your teammates in the movie.
Ray was in the movie, yes.
So did you let him know that your character was based on his brother?
No. Let anybody know. I just I knew by myself that I wanted three things in the film. I wanted Dave Schultz, Bobby Schmutz, and the Shark in Jaws, and I accomplished that.
So all three of you are actors first, as opposed to, a lot of the guys who were hockey players first. So what's it like to be in a movie with the legendary Paul Newman? Yvon, let's start with you. Was he big up in Canada? Was it someone that you knew his body of work? And what was it like for you to be in the film with him?
That was very, very interesting, and that was very easy too, because his children were learning French in high school, and we spent a lot of time together. I was helping him to write letters in French to his children. We were pretty close. As you can see, he was not allowed to be in the crowd when we went to Johnstown Jets games. So we were staying in the journalist box up, up the arena. And he had a gift from his wife, which was looking like a gun, a gun bag, but it was for beers. So between periods, I was filling it with beers. He was not allowed to go through crowd because they were all looking at him and yelling at him, and so we were pretty close. We had good scenes together when we are in the bar, and there is a player coming in, and we're sitting at the bar, and says, "I think it's a fight." I said, "Are you crazy? He has a big cock like a whore." We had to redo these lines so many times because he was unable not to laugh. So we were pretty close. And for me, I did the National Theatre School of Canada, and I was looking at him like one of my actor hero. He was one of the actors who create the actor guild, the actor school in New York. So that was fun to work with him. It was very, very easy and very funny. He was such a great actor. It was easy, every way. That's it.
So
And okay, I'm listening to you.
we seem to have lost Mark for a second. He's probably rebooting and coming back on. So we talked a little with the earlier group, about working with George Wright Hill. And I think, Chris, you mentioned that he just, make me laugh type of thing. So how, what other memories do you have of things they did? And the other question is, in terms of people who are not hockey players, how much did you have to learn? How much did you have to rely on Ned Dowd and other people and how to be hockey players?
Is that to me?
Let's start with Chris. Yeah.
Well, the first part, Ned was a great help in that whole process, because he was always there, and he always helped you out when you weren't sure what you were doing as far as the skating were. Now, I didn't have to skate that much. I was in net, so until I had to come out of it and then chase after Paul. Now they kept postponing the shoot time, and then to be sending me back to New York. So I'd be there for 2 days. Then they say, "We're not going to get to it this week. Why don't you go back to New York?" George said, "Go back to New York." So they sent me back to New York. Then I'd come back. And then Paul one time said, "Are you still here?" Because we hadn't shot our scene. And it was like every other week I'd be showing up. And I only had 3 minutes of the movie. I mean, basically, Hanrahan isn't on that long. He's like, he has a great buildup because they talk about him, but like Tartuffe, all of a sudden he's there. But it was just a great joy to work with all of those people, and to keep coming back and say, "Okay, it's party time again."
So was there, either Chris or Paul, was there any sort of choreography for the fight scenes? Or let's do a fight scene and see how it goes?
Nope, there wasn't any choreography as far as I'm concerned.
With our fight scene, there was because we had, I think there were 2 cameras working. And there had to be like there were body shots, and then we had to match it because it was Paul, and then it was over Paul, and then it was over me. So there was choreography involved. I don't remember anyone saying don't do that or try that, but Paul and I would work something out so that because we were in such close proximity, he had to react to my non-hits and I had to react to him. And if we didn't know where we were hitting, how could you react to it? So there was a little bit of choreography involved.
I don't know if you guys can hear me again. I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We can hear you.
Yes.
All right, good. All right, so I heard the tail end of Chris, you were talking about Paul, but so, Paul,
Yeah.
Going back to Paul Newman, what's it like to have your first line in the movie to have to tell Paul Newman that he sucks, well, you know what, and have him answer back, all I can get, that's your first line in the movie.
It was extraordinary because it was my first line ever. So, I mean, I had to walk up to my idol and say, he sucks. And it was extraordinary. All I can say. He was gracious. He was nice about it. Shook hands, and then we got into it, and that was that. It was a gunfight at the OK Corral. It was a gunfight in the beginning of Gunsmoke.
It seems we're starting to have some connectivity issues, so let's try and wrap this up. You look at all the items that are available on the internet, your characters' jerseys, T-shirts.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that every day in the mail you guys must get pictures to sign. Are you surprised that 43 years later there's still a huge audience and a cult following for this film? And what do you attribute that to? So, Chris, let's start with you on that one.
I just received some yesterday that I signed, send back to Ontario, and
This morning.
that's one right there. That it's amazing to me. I did not expect it. I did not know about it. When we shot the film together, we had a wonderful time. We enjoyed each other. We just were brothers, and it was a great time. And then 20 years, really 15, 20 years after the fact, we begin to learn how much of a cult film it had become.
Yeah.
It's a staple for every NHL team, every junior hockey team. Yvon is holding up his mail that's going out today. What about you, Paul? Do you still get requests all the time?
Oh yeah, I got two sitting on my desk right now.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. It's extraordinary. One's a mitten, and one's a sign these for me.
Unbelievable.
And what can I do? I sign them and let them go. Why not?
All right, guys. Thanks so much. This has been a blast. I'd love to do it again. I mean, there were some issues with the Facebook Live portion. This is going over YouTube Live, but we'll post it up on Facebook as well. And this has been great. So thanks so much for your time. And importantly, thanks for a movie that I can watch
Mark's favorite
over and over again. What's that, AJ?
Mark's favorite film. He can never get enough of it.
Never get enough. Never, ever. And obviously he's...
May
All
I
right,
say
guys.
something?
Yes, absolutely.
I want to say hello to my friend Ken Blake, who brought me back to Slapshot in 2001. And from that moment, we did tours in Germany, and it never stops. That brought all the players and the actors together. And since that moment, we have fun every time we meet, and we are doing charities. We are doing very good things.
Yeah, Ken Blake is it.
He is. He's the one who brought it all together, and he's the one who let us know that we had a film that was going to last for a long time.
Absolutely, and people out on social media know Ken very well, and people in hockey circles as well. Very well deserved shout out to Ken Blake, guys. Again, can't thank you enough for today, and can't thank you enough for Slapshot. Nothing else needs to be said.
Thank you, guys. And
thank you very much.
Nice to be there.
Hanrahan thanks you.
All right, guys, have a great one. Thanks. All right, that wraps it up for
Okay,
AJ and I.